A Jamaican named Ray Morgan was convicted of 4 counts of obtaining money by false pretense. Now, he was sentenced to what amounted to 12 years in jail. He tried to appeal because of a bunch of inefficiencies and problems in the criminal justice system. He ended up serving 10 out of the 12 years he had been sentenced to, and his appeal was never heard. It's one of the embarrassing cases in our criminal justice system that points to the need for urgent reform. I'm going to be talking some more about that in just a moment. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dionne Jackson-Miller. So criminal justice reform is a talking point all around the Caribbean, right? Because all of us have problems in our criminal justice system. Let me go back for a moment to the Ray Morgan case as an illustration. So the Ray Morgan case was a really bad one. I told you he had been convicted and sentenced in 2011. Right? And realized that his appeal wasn't getting anywhere. He wasn't just sitting around in prison waiting for the appeal to be heard. He was actually asking for help. So in June 2017, he wrote to the Office of the Chief Justice asking for help. Remember now, this is 6 years after his conviction, and he received a response, but no help. So 6 months later, in December 2017, he wrote to the Office of the Chief Justice again. In that letter, he said this. He said he was most appalled at the justice system, and specifically that nothing has been done to date in relation to his case. He said, how can anyone be content with a situation where the appeal process seems to be taking as long as a sentence to be heard? So that was 2017. Then in 2020, he wrote to the Deputy Commissioner of Corrections, and he said this. He said, I appealed on February 12, 2011. I've not heard one single positive word to this very day, despite my several attempts. This would have been now 9 years after his conviction. 9 years and no appeal. So another time I'll do a full video on the Ray Morgan case, alright? It makes astonishing reading because it shows how very bad the system can be at almost every level. That case went all the way to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council called it a serious miscarriage of justice. Ray Morgan case is just one case, so there have been a whole series of cases in Jamaica recently in the past few years on the issue of delay, in which people have just been languishing in jail, in prison for all kinds of different reasons. And again, it just shows a severe problem we have with delay in the criminal justice system. But it's not we won. We have company, if you want to call it that. Look at this Barbadian case. This is a case of Sean Weeks. Now, the victim in that case was murdered in October 2000. Now, Weeks, who was the one eventually convicted of the murder, had left Barbados soon after the murder. He was traveling up and down, going to a bag of places. He came back to Barbados in 2011. So we're just counting from 2011, all right? The police named Lele, they arrested him right at the airport, right as him land. Bam! Man get arrested. But guess what? That was October 2011. He was charged with murder 2 days after that. Guess when the trial started? 2020. 9 years after the man was arrested and charged before the trial was held. Now, at trial, he was convicted and he was sentenced to life imprisonment. He appealed. In May 2021, the Court of Appeal said the delay of 9 years in bringing him to trial was quite extraordinary. They call it inordinate, and they said it was a breach of the reasonable time guarantee in the Constitution. That's a guarantee of your right to be tried within a reasonable time. Now, the Court of Appeal, as a result, reduced his sentence by 5 years, because of that inordinate delay. And that case went all the way to the Caribbean Court of Justice, which agreed with the Court of Appeal. So delay is a real problem in our criminal justice system, not just in Jamaica. No, it's not the only problem, of course. I put out a question on X asking people what they thought of the criminal justice system. Saeed, who is an attorney, said the criminal justice system does deliver justice in several forms. He said the issue is the time it takes is frustrating, and that blurs the perception of justice. He said from an attorney's point of view, the court infrastructure also needs fixing, better bathrooms, rooms to meet clients, and so on. Another lawyer, Dr. Emir Crown, said Trinidad and Jamaica suffer from inexcusable and often unconstitutional delays that ultimately hurt the timely administration of justice and public confidence in the overall criminal justice system. So, see what I mean when I say it's not just us? I gave you a Barbadian example, and here is Dr. Crown saying delays also a problem in Trinidad and Tobago. Ghanaian said the Jamaican criminal justice system needs rehabilitation measures for prisoners. There's also the need for modern facilities to house them. And Contrarian says, I think highly of our criminal justice system, especially when I look at the quality of our jurisprudence and judgments made by our courts. However, better infrastructure is needed, expertise and quality assurance measures as it relates to the handling of evidence. So, yeah, we have problems right across the region. So in 2023, the Caribbean Court of Justice Academy for Law held a conference on criminal justice reform in the Caribbean at Needham's Point in Barbados. And they came up with what is now called the Needham's Point Declaration, because that's how the thing go, right? You have a conference somewhere, you have a meeting, you have some outcome from that conference or meeting like a declaration or an agreement. It gets called after the place where it came into being. Now, it's a 39-point declaration. I'm not going to go over all of it with you. It has different sections, so I just want to give you a couple examples of what it says. So there's a section on policy interventions. One of the calls there is for crime to be viewed as a public health emergency. There's a section on legislative interventions. In other words, what new laws can be passed to help the problem. And that section has a call, among other things, for laws to provide for greater use of forensic, scientific, digital and expert witness evidence, including the use of modern evidence gathering techniques such as interception of communications, digital recordings of confessions and interviews, and DNA testing. There's a section on the police and the prosecution. One example of one of the points in that section is a call for the witness protection systems and protocols to be enhanced to include or to reactivate a Caribbean-wide system. Now, there's a section on representation and the rights of the accused, and one of the points there is a call for trials to be held within 1 year of the accused person being charged. In the case of indictable offenses, those are serious offenses that would be heard in the Supreme Court, and 6 months for summary offenses, meaning a trial should be held within 6 months of the person being charged with a summary offense. Those are the less serious offenses. They would be heard in the parish courts. And in the section under survivors and victim rights, there is a call for the establishment, where none exists, of a criminal injuries compensation fund to benefit victims or survivors of crime, especially those whose cases, because of abysmally low detection rates, aren't pursued in the criminal justice system. And the call here, the suggestion, is that a significant contribution to that compensation fund for victims should come from the proceeds of crime. There's also a call there for the courts to encourage a greater voice for victims and survivors in criminal proceedings, such as by broadening the scope of victim impact statements. Now, a victim impact statement is a statement that a victim or the relative of a victim would give, say, at a sentencing. So the judge at the sentencing takes a number of things into account, whether or not the person who has been convicted has had any previous convictions, were they generally of good character before this particular incident. The whole idea behind victim impact statements is that the judge then gets to hear how it is this crime affected the victim or the family of the victim, and is able then to take that into consideration when he or she is passing down or handing down sentence. So that's why you see that call there for victim impact statements. Now the points in the declaration make a whole heap of sense, and you do start to get the sense that people really start to reach a stage when them said, no, things can't continue like this, something has to change. But it'll be interesting to see if we get it done. It will be especially, I think, interesting to see what different countries in the Caribbean do in relation to this declaration, and how different countries, say Jamaica as opposed to Barbados, as opposed to Trinidad and Tobago, how each of them will go about trying to implement the points in this declaration. Now, the other thing, of course, the other question, will the governments give the money that's needed, give the additional resources to the criminal justice system for these improvements to be made? You know, can the people in the system change how them do things after all these years, after doing things a certain way for donkey's years? Lots of training, and, you know, we're talking about, in some cases, paradigm shifts, real significant changes in how the system works, and you really have to train people and work with them to bring them along with you in trying to implement those kinds of changes. So I don't know if all of this is going to happen. I really do hope so. I should let you know I'm actually moderating a discussion on the Needham's Point Declaration for the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is how it came to my attention, and it is why I wanted to share this information with you. Now, after the forum, when we get to hear what some of the different countries have been doing and get different perspectives on the whole idea of criminal justice reform, I am going to do another video updating you on what happened there. And, you know, do I feel hopeful? Do I feel optimistic? Do I feel pessimistic? I tell you something, I do like the idea of seeing this Caribbean-wide approach to the whole idea of criminal justice reform. We know it's necessary. We know it's important. We're going to have to wait and see what actually happens. And of course, as always, I want to know your thoughts. I want your thoughts on the criminal justice system. If you've had any experiences with the system that you want to share, whether, you know, as somebody who was involved in it, as a witness, as a juror, maybe somebody even who was before the court, share with us and tell us what are your thoughts and your feelings about the criminal justice system on any of our countries in the region. All right, as always, please remind you, like the video, you know, share it with somebody you think might be interested. And as always, we ask you to come back next time. I'm Dionne. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.